Hi, everyone. My name is Meredith Newman. I'm a reporter with the News Journal. I am here with my colleague, Sarah Gamard. It is election day. I've had 6 cups of coffee. Let's talk about some races. So, Sarah, let's talk about the respective polling places that we went to today. But first, I should make note, for all updates regarding Delaware elections, make sure to head to DelawareOnline.com. We have a constant live blog of updates regarding polling places, races later in the night, as they're called. Great resource. We also have a great voting guide for those who haven't voted yet today, just to make sure you know who's on the ballot and you know their stances. So make sure to check out all of those resources first. But Sarah, tell me a little bit about your morning and what you saw at the polling places that you went to.
So I took my first trip to Brandywine High School this morning, and I was actually pretty shocked because I went to Brandywine High School during the presidential primary on July 7th to go report. And I distinctly remember showing up and just watching voters just walk in and out of the building, no problem. Like they were going, I mean, it was like they parked, they just walked in and they came right out. And I talked to a few voters at the time, and they were telling me over and over again how quick and easy it was, and how they were even like pleasantly surprised at how quick and easy it was, given the fact that they had to wear masks at the time. And when I showed up this morning, there was a line around the school, which, in theory shouldn't be surprising because, it's a nationally accepted expectation that this was going to be huge turnout today, even at the polls, given the fact that so many people have already voted early. But this was a huge, I was very surprised to see this line. It must have been hundreds of people around the school. And I realized after I, stopped being so shocked about it, was that this, what I thought was interesting was that this high school is in Senate District 5, which is one of the most hotly contested races this year. So that might have had something to do with it, because shortly afterward, I went over to Mount Pleasant Elementary School over near Bellefonte. And there were a lot of people there too, but there wasn't a line around the school that there was in Brandywine High School. So I talked to a voter over at Mount Pleasant, and she said she had to wait 30 minutes, and it wasn't an awful wait for her, but she was shocked at how many people were there. She's a regular voter, and she said it was more people than she was used to seeing. So the theme here is very high turnout, even though we've already had a fifth of registered voters, more than a fifth of registered voters vote by mail and absentee already in this state. So,
yeah, I went to Del Tech this morning to vote myself. That's my polling place. And I previously voted there in 2018. It was an in and out operation at that time. But this morning there was a huge line of people. I waited in line for an hour. Everyone was wearing masks, I should say, and were doing their best to keep social distancing.
Same here.
I also encountered a couple of folks who were at the wrong polling place, they were told, which meant that they had to leave their line and go wait in a different line, which was really upsetting. Our colleague Jeannie had reported a story about how this was affecting some folks during the primary. And it was really awful to see them have to get back out there and just have one more barrier in terms of voting. So like Sarah mentioned, we expect to see more turnout throughout the day. Nationally, we've already hit historic levels in terms of voter participation, predominantly because of just the amount of vote in mail-in ballots that we have this year. Of course, Delaware also changed some of its rules regarding elections. Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about those changes in light of the pandemic?
Sure. Do you mean the coronavirus-related restrictions or the rules here?
Well, also just mail-in ballots.
Yeah, when the pandemic started, we were looking ahead at 3 statewide elections. And so the governor came out initially. He had postponed the presidential primary to later in the year in July. And at the time, everyone was allowed to vote absentee. Shortly afterward, before the General Assembly adjourned for this year, they passed legislation to let everybody vote by mail, which is different than voting absentee. So every registered voter for this election should have gotten an application for a mail-in ballot, not the mail-in ballot itself, but the application that they could then send back to the elections department, receive a mail-in ballot, and then ideally give it back to the elections department before polls close today. So I should mention, while we're on that subject, that if you have received a mail-in ballot that you have not submitted back to the elections department yet, please do not try to mail that ballot. It will not get to the elections department in time. You can, however, still drop it off at the county elections office in the county that you live. And you can find the address on the elections department's website at elections.delaware.gov, or you can go to the polls still and just verify with a poll worker that you have not submitted your ballot yet, and they should let you use the machine. So you still have time to vote, but if you have a mail-in ballot, please do not put it in the mailbox. It will not arrive in time and your vote will not count. So anyway, if that makes sense, they've changed the rules this year. It's, to use an exhausted word, it's an unprecedented situation. We don't know what the results of not only the election, but just this experiment of having so many people vote by mail, how long it's going to take to actually count the votes, and how many people really will turn out in person versus voting. So you can go outside and see there's tons of people who still decided to vote from home, but like I mentioned earlier, more than 160,000 people voted from home thanks to these new coronavirus related allowances that voters have. So what I'm interested in seeing is whether this is going to set precedent for future elections, even if we don't have to social distance, because lawmakers have tried to implement vote by mail already and early voting and things like that. So it's going to be.
It should be interesting to see. So let's get to races. What, in terms of local elections, specifically regarding the General Assembly, what are you keeping your eye on? Of course, we can't talk about every single race, but right. What are 2 or 3 that you think will be of note tonight?
Sure. In terms of legislative races, like I mentioned earlier, like the one that I kind of witnessed at Brandywine High School, where there's a very, very contested race this year with the Senate Minority Whip, who's a Republican. Her name is Kathy Cloutier. She's one of the highest ranking Republicans in the state Senate. And she is being challenged by attorney named Kyle Evans-Gay, who's a Democrat. And, Kyle announced a while ago, and the race has gotten a lot of backing from the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party feels that this district is primed to flip. And there's another district also in Newcastle County. That one is over in North Wilmington. There's another one over in Ellesmere, Senate District 7, which is currently held by a Republican named Anthony Del Callo, who's a moderate. And he's being challenged by Auditor Kathy McGinnis's former chief of staff, Spiros Mantavinos. And again, the Democratic Party is very confident that they can flip this seat. Kyle Evans-Gay and Spiros Mantavinos, they've received a ton of money in individual donations alone. In terms of individual donations, according to the data that we've gathered, they are some of the highest recipients in the state for campaign donations, not including PAC funding. But that goes to show that there's people in this state that really want them to defeat these few remaining Republicans in Newcastle County. These are the two senators I just mentioned who are in office and being challenged are the last 2 Republicans in the Senate that represent Newcastle County. So if the Democratic Party gets what they want today, including those 2 Senate seats, we're going to have a much, much bluer county up here than we already do. So they're trying to oust the remaining Republicans.
Let's talk about some historic races. Of course, we reported a lot about this during the primary, but let's talk about those 2 or even 3 historic races that could make history in terms of the candidates themselves.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first one that comes to mind, obviously, is Sarah McBride. She's made national headlines since college. What?
Tell us about her, because folks might not know.
Sure. If you don't know who Sarah McBride is, she's already kind of a well-known name in Delaware because she's just been active politically. She first made headlines, I want to say it was when she was in college at American University. She came out as transgender when she was the student body president at her university. And since then, she's advocated for LGBTQ rights in Delaware. She's been able to pass. She's been able to help pass legislation and lobby for legislation that has really advanced LGBTQ rights in Delaware. So, she's made a name for herself as an activist here, but now she's running as a senator in Senate District 1. She's trying to replace Harris McDowell, who is retiring this year. She's up against a Republican named Stephen Washington. Her district is it's parts of Bellefonte, Trolley Square, and I want to say Claymont. And if you walk around this neighborhood, her signs are everywhere. She's done a very good job running a very aggressive campaign. She's got a lot of money in her war chest. We can expect her to win just because this is a very Democratic district, and she has been a very viable candidate so far, especially because this is the first time she's running for office, and she's very young. She's 30 years old.
And I think, just to jump in here, if she is elected, she would be the first
the first transgender official in Delaware and the highest ranking transgender official in the country. I mean, it's a feat for people in the LGBT community. And that's not including the fact that she's not just running on LGBTQ issues. She's a versatile candidate. She's running on, paid leave, healthcare, just things that just, pretty normal Democratic policies.
So just to move on, what other candidates or races are you watching that might make history tonight?
What other races am I watching? Well, like I said, there are other districts. Most of the ones that I'm watching are in Newcastle County. There are other districts in the House, like House districts that are held by Republicans in Newcastle County that the Democratic Party thinks it can flip. That really is the story here in terms of I guess, races that you'd want to watch in the legislature, because there are really only a handful of Republicans left representing Newcastle County. So, certain people in the political sphere will argue that this is not going to be a good thing for Delaware if you have a county just run entirely by Democrats in the General Assembly, on top of the fact that we already have all statewide seats held by Democrats in this state. So, but for the Democratic Party, obviously, that would be a huge victory. So it depends on where you stand. It depends on which side of the aisle you stand on.
And just to note, too, that at the federal level, Chris Coons, the junior senator for us here in Delaware, and Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester are also up for re-election tonight.
Yes, they both are being challenged. They're both being challenged by very Trumpian Republicans. I would say Chris Coons more so than Lisa Blunt Rochester, but both of their challengers, Lee Murphy against Lisa Blunt Rochester and Lauren Witzke against Chris Coons, are both, very avid supporters of the president. It's hard to argue that these Republicans are going to unseat these Democrats because they have all the things that incumbents typically win on, and those tend to be name recognition, incumbency, tenure, and the fact that they hold they're Democrats in a Democrat-held state. And they also, of course, they have more money, right? And that's going to all make a difference. But yeah, I mean, Lauren Witzke, she's also made national headlines. She's definitely, she's arguably further on the right than the president for a lot of her policies, but she's kind of attached herself to the Make America Great Again agenda. A lot of political analysts will compare her to Christine O'Donnell, who was the Tea Party candidate who ran for the same seat in 2010. She's really, she pretty much came out of nowhere this past cycle to run against Chris Coons. And yeah, she had a lot of momentum. She won the nomination without getting the endorsement from the GOP. She's got a very, it's a really unconventional campaign. A lot of people have responded to it either negatively or positively. She's garnered a lot of attention, made a lot of national headlines. And, regardless of if she wins, she's set a new precedent for the Republican Party, just as Christine O'Donnell did in 2010. So she's already made history without winning a seat, if that makes sense.
So for all local races here tonight, just a reminder, you can head to DelawareOnline.com. We will be updating the tracker as results come in. Polls don't close till, I believe, 8 p.m., so we'll be later tonight. And again, for all voting information, for finding out who is on your ballot, what candidates stand for, make sure to check to DelawareOnline.com and our voter guide. But before we leave, we have to talk about Joe Biden, this guy from Delaware.
That guy from Delaware.
Yeah, so I have been covering Joe Biden for the past year and a half or so, and it all comes down to tonight, though, again, it's still very unclear if we will have results or a victor named tonight, which is considered normal. It's typical for not all results to come in on election night, though this year it has a different challenge of just the number of mail-in ballots. So in terms of what Joe Biden's day looks like today, he started his day at his church, St. Joseph on the Brandywine. And then he headed to Scranton, which is his birthplace, as we all probably know at this point. And then he'll be in Philly for more just campaign stops. And this represents a huge blitz that his campaign has been doing the last 3 days in terms of just barnstorming different corners of Pennsylvania. It's seen as a key state that can help Biden get to the 270 electoral votes. And so for tonight, if you look at the Chase Center at the riverfront, it looks completely different. It's very much transformed like it was during the DNC. Again, an unexpected thing to come to Wilmington. I've been getting this question a lot, and it's very unclear if this will be open to the public in terms of any remarks that he gives. We haven't gotten any information about it. Just going off of previous experiences with the DNC, when there was kind of the first drive-in rally that Biden would again use throughout the final weeks of his campaign, those spots were really just offered to elected officials or members of the Democratic Party. Again, it's unclear if it will be open to the public. But for more information about tonight, you should head to DelawareOnline.com. And is there anything else, Sarah, that we should talk about in terms of Election Day?
Yeah, I was wondering if you would indulge us a little bit. You, if I remember correctly, you were following the Biden campaign this whole weekend. I mean, I'm wondering if you could talk to us about whether, what I'm curious about is whether you think the high turnout today is, going to help Trump or Biden in Delaware. What do you expect is going to happen because of all the people that showed up today? Do you think it's going to help swing in Biden's favor or Trump's favor, given the fact that Republicans tend to vote in person, according to the data that we've seen?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I guess we won't find out till, tonight when results come in. But I think just going off of historically, higher turnout tends to help Democrats. It is true that more Republicans or more Republican-leaning voters plan to vote in person. But I will say at the kind of nearing the end of this campaign race, the Democrats also were really pressing for folks to vote in person if they felt safe enough to do so. So I just have a feeling that it will benefit Democrats. Again, polling throughout this race, specifically in battleground states like Pennsylvania, have favored Joe Biden. Nationally, he is in the double digits to some polls. And it's interesting, a week or so ago, I don't remember what time it is anymore, but I was speaking to poll experts about a story just in terms of kind of what 2016 was like and how some polls were accurate. But in reality, at this point, Hillary Clinton was only a couple points in terms of the national polls ahead of Donald Trump. So the race was much closer in 2016 than it is in some ways now. Again, President Trump still has a path to 270 electoral votes. It's much more limited than Joe Biden is, but again, it's not like it's a done deal or anything. So I guess long story short, I imagine turnout will benefit Democrats, but again, you don't really know until, We're
not going to know until we know, and that could be, unfortunately, not anytime tonight. So it might be a bit of a wait before we have all the answers to all these races. So we will be covering it in the meantime.
Yeah, so I think that is going to be it for us here. Thank you, Sarah, for joining me. It's good to see you virtually.
Great to see you.
And for all coverage regarding election night, regarding Joe Biden, regarding local races, make sure to head to DelawareOnline.com. If you see something at your polling site that you think that we should know about, make sure to hit us up on social media, email us, talk to us. We want to know what's going on the ground. And just once again, your investment by subscribing really allows Sarah and I and all of our colleagues at the News Journal to continue to do what we're doing, ask these hard questions, be on the ground, and write important stories. So we would so appreciate it if you could take the time and subscribe to our work. And with that, just one more pitch for heading to DelawareOnline.com for all election 2020 coverage. And have a good afternoon.